It's back. Alright. So, today on Bible Smack, I'm not going to go too deep into a lot of exegesis or anything. We're just going to do like a little bit of commentary from stuff I've been looking at YouTube. I'm starting to know something. I don't know if it's like a trend or if it's just my interest. Okay. I noticed a channel called Anabaptist Perspectives, and basically this is kind of with the Mennonite group, and it appears to me two things. One is that with these Mennonites are usually characterized as the second-rate Amish, even though the Mennonites came out first. Okay, but basically. The Mennonites, I believe, are related to Baptists. And Baptists have kind of like this weird hybrid thing going where they combined Separatist Reformed theology with Anabaptism, which would later on become known as the Mennonites. Now, what it appears to be with their movement right now is you got some that are kind of saying, hey, let's get out there. Let's do a neo-evangelical version of Mennonite worship or religion. And basically, they're starting to attract some. I don't know if there's a lot. They did have one megachurch pastor who's joined up with him. But basically, the idea is that they're starting to attract some groups, whether they're broad evangelicals from megachurches or whether they're from liberal denominations, but they are attracting some of these groups to them through the message of non-resistance and pacifism. Obviously, one of the big liberal values in the last 20 to 40 years in the Democrat Party has been pacifism. And this is especially popular among hippies, and then you get Jesus movement hippies, and so I think a lot of this is a natural progression of saying, okay, well, if we want a historic tradition, and that's been kind of the thing. It's like, the megachurch church growth movement left a lot of people just empty. And so it's like, well, what am I? So basically they did a further progressivism with the emergent church. And then Reformed theology was able to jump on the bandwagon and get people early. I believe that the popularity of Reformed theology is going to slowly collapse on itself, because that's what they're good at. But basically, as they're looking for a tradition, there are some that are coming to this point because they are into the values of being anti-war. And so they notice, hey, the Amish, the Mennonites, they're anti-war. And, I thought about this a couple of years back. Just, I was like, they would be disgusted by the sight of the Amish. And yet, when you really think about it, it does match up with all their values. Okay, the Amish are not anti-environment. Very environmentally friendly. Not a lot of carbon going out there. Okay. They're pacifist. They live off the land. So a lot of these different liberal values that they really score at, they just, are not as easily noticed. So, but, an Amish lifestyle is still too extreme for these people. So the Mennonite is now kind of opening themselves up and saying, hey, watch our lifestyle. So I've been checking out that site and in other groups and other, videos and stuff. As somebody who holds to a form of landmarkism, which is the idea that there was always a New Testament Christianity, a New Testament church, maybe I should just say that. It's a lot better. As a New Testament Christian, I see these rooted as New Testament churches. Okay. It doesn't guarantee. There are Baptists that are, like, hey, I'm a Baptist. I think they've been around forever. But no, that one's, they're not going in there. Okay. They're not following. They're not practicing the faith. Well, you could say the same thing with Mennonites. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones. You take the good, you take the bad, and then get tooty. But old people know what I'm talking about. Anyhow, so when I look at that tradition, I really see a lot of things where the Southern Baptists, the Baptists in general, have failed. They have fallen apart. They have gotten utterly stupid and really just screwed up. But in the Baptist Faith and Message, the Baptist Faith and Message has always been pacifistic, and yet, Moeller pretty much flipped the bird to that idea. Honestly, like all these professors pushing just war theory without any regard to what the confession states, while kicking people off based on their creed and then trying to overwhelm the denomination, which I think they've they've half-heartedly accomplished. They've gotten the people in these positions of power, but I think that this is going to be a part of a bigger backlash. Okay. Nevertheless, the idea that like we are separate unto God. Okay. 2 Corinthians 6, be ye separate. We are to be a believer's church, a regenerate church, not a covenant community. Moeller really did defecate on a lot of New Testament Christian ideas. And what did he do? Let me tell you something. Not even like an issue of like how Calvinistic he was. He didn't even reach deep into the Calvinistic Baptist tradition. Okay. Where he was going is he's going into the non-Baptist traditions. The non-Baptist Reformed, to say we are a man-made religion that finds its parentage in the Roman Catholic Church. And so doing, really, we just look at how like the evangelism has plummeted. When the seminaries were as far left and liberal as they could be, the church just knew that they were. And therefore, they just decided, okay, well, we're not going to have any of that, and we'll go evangelizing on our own. And today, with this seminary cooperation and all this kind of stuff, okay, our numbers of baptism are not even close. Okay, our culture has taken a head dive. Okay, and you look at the resurgence around 2000, and I remember this. I pinpoint this at a Billy Graham crusade in Louisville. They broke the stadium records, and Billy Graham just symbolically hands it over to Dr. Moeller. Moeller just goes, but it's like, that was like the moment. You knew that he's passed the baton, and they took that baton and they just dug a little hole in the ground. So, nevertheless, so we have a worldly church, and so the Baptist churches have been really just whoring themselves out to worldliness and just, thank you, sir, may I have another, and pushing, instruments of war. And I am not a pure pacifist, but even I can notice, hey, you guys have no conviction at all. They were just jumping to fight the next crusade for the Catholic Church. And that's what they did. Okay, they fought the Muslims. Okay. Well, who are the Muslims the enemies of? The Crusades. Third Crusade, let's do it. In fact, it was a Vatican spy that actually gave the Bush administration the intel that there were weapons of mass destruction, specifically nuclear weapons. So, basically watching that fiasco, noticing how, American troops going over and fighting Muslims doesn't really breed a great reaction when it comes to having missionaries over there. Okay? Getting huge backlashes and huge amounts of persecution. And the military making a stance. We're not going to protect the Christians. We're just going to give them a bad name. Right? So that's basically kind of where you see that. Heck, man, a lot of the soldiers come back and they're like, hey, maybe Islam's good. Maybe I'll become a Muslim. There's really nothing good that, really comes out of that. But, the thing is that I don't go with the full pacifism that these guys want. Because with the full pacifism, what you're really kind of arguing, okay, is that the government can never stop evil. It's never allowed to stop evil. And that's what God put the government there for. Right? And, the Bible has soldiers who become Christian. It doesn't say people aren't allowed to be soldiers. Okay? But there are soldiers who became Christian. So, once you get to that, like Cornelius, once you get to that understanding, you can't really go with this whole, war is always bad. Okay, so, if war was always bad, then America shouldn't have fought in World War II. Do we really think that we would be better off if the Nazis took over the world? Is that where we're going? But that's what you end up with. And at the same time, we do have some issues when it comes to, what is a just war? And they made an issue of, was America founded as a Christian nation? And I'd have to go back. In fact, I'd say it'd be better to look at my old videos of American history from a New Testament Christian perspective. Look at those, because I'm really thinking about it more deeply and more clear at that time. But basically, there is a secular strand, okay? There is a Christian strand. The American Revolution, was it just rebellion? Well, you have to understand that there was a French and Indian War that, the Jesuits had arranged for the French and Indians to come on and surround the English colonies and to take them out. And that England decided to just leave America to fend for itself. When you understand that going on just a couple decades before the Revolution, then you start to understand the other things. Yes, there was the Tea Party that said we need to be represented. If you're going to tax us, we need representation. But that's all in light of the fact that Britain was not doing their job to protect the nation. Okay? So not only were they in monarchical authority, but they were violent. And so, in violence meaning we're going to basically encourage your enemies to attack you, and we're not going to help you. So once you kind of get that understanding of things, then you understand that there was some justification for the American Revolution. But there is also this issue of separatism that, mainline Protestants did not get into. Okay? There are many occasions where Protestants could have done better, especially when it came to deal with Indians. There are times that they could have done better, especially when it came to the slave trade. But there was some things that we accomplished. Okay, the North became abolitionist because abolitionists were Christians. Okay, they actually made their debates based off of Christian principles, not on evolutionary principles. So, you have to understand those things. So when they do like the anti-war thing, there is a lot of themes where they start to agree with the left on. And it's kind of like the nature of the beast. It's like, okay, well, these are the bad guys. So you just went from one extreme to the other, and you can't really do that. But yet, so this is kind of where we're at, and I think that there is a limited government understanding that government should be limited, and that church should be limited in its interaction with the government. I don't think that the church should root for one group against another during a time of war. Now, it is true that if a church is in a nation and they need physical protection from the nation, that they'd be glad and they could celebrate and they could pray for the members that are going off to war and all that kind of stuff. But be very, very careful. Okay, we're not in here to take the sides. Okay, and this is one of those things that's really backfired across the world. Okay, because they think that, Christianity is the white man's God. And it gets irritating because there are, so many huge amounts of people who are not white who are Christian. So many amounts of people that are white who are going to hell, who are in hell, okay? And yet they stigmatize those things because of that blurring. And we have to be careful to kind of say, no, we're not following that blur. All right. But the New Testament Christian faith, not only was there pacifists who refused to own slaves, like the Anabaptist, but also many slaves took up the moniker of Baptist, and they were New Testament Christians. Okay, so that was their way of outreach, and they could outreach those different groups. I don't feel like this perceived wave, it might be a wave, I don't know, I didn't really measure out all the numbers, but I don't think this will be a permanent solution for the Mennonites, and I'll tell you why. Because even though this group of secular evangelicals is anti-war, there's not really anything connecting them in the sense that the Mennonites want to be anti-world. Okay, that's the whole reason why they're anti-war, is because they're separate from the world. And even the pastor who had went from Baptist to Mennonite, that megachurch, he sat there and said, "Yeah, we're just one tradition in the body of Christ." Oh. Body of Christ is the local church, okay? Be ye separate. We're not together, we're separate. All right, so just fundamentally, it's not going to work. What will probably end up happening is that a lot of these people will piggyback from Mennonite over to Quaker, okay? And, Quaker won't last, but at least it'll be accurate. I can't see them, jamming for Jesus and else and going, let's be quiet, let's be quiet. That was just a couple seconds of Quaker worship for all you homies. Yeah, so basically, I think ultimately, if they're accurate, then Quaker's where they need to be, so that'll probably be what happens, because I see some growth. Some of these small groups are starting to say, hey, let's use YouTube, so that's what I kind of see going on there. One thing that concerns me, though, with this whole Anabaptist perspectives thing, no real talk on soteriology. Nothing. Okay. Like one video I saw on evangelism, maybe one video on missions, but no real spelling out. Do you work your way to heaven or do you not work your way to heaven? I don't mind if that's not the issue, okay? Because, you know, there's a good point, you know, when people are like, well, is this a salvation issue or not? You know, we got to get away from that Gnostic mentality of only spiritual. I get that. That's good. But still, you know, you put about 67 videos and you can't just have one of those 70 videos say, let's talk about what salvation is. Get it straight. You know, so that's definitely troubling. But we'll see what keeps on going up next. So, catch you later.